We're always taught that money is all about the math. It's about spreadsheets and formulas and how smart you are. But what if that's completely wrong? What if the single biggest key to financial success has almost nothing to do with your IQ and everything to do with your behavior? To show you what I mean, let's look at the story of two completely different men. Over here we have Ronald Reed. He was a janitor and a gas station attendant. And on the other side, Richard Fuscone, a Merrill Lynch executive with a Harvard MBA. Now, one of them died a secret multimillionaire, leaving millions to charity. The other, despite all his credentials, died bankrupt. How on earth does that happen? Well, Ronald Reed's secret was honestly almost boringly simple. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't have some genius strategy. He just saved the little money he could, put it into big, stable companies, blue chip stocks, and then he did the hardest part. Nothing. He just waited. For decades, he let his money work for him, letting that magic of compounding do its thing. Now, on the flip side, you've got Richard Fuscone. On paper, he was the brilliant one, right? Harvard MBA. But his intelligence got overshadowed by his behavior. He borrowed a ton of money, lived way beyond his means, and when the 2008 financial crisis hit, poof. The same leverage that made him feel rich just completely wiped him out. And this gets us to the absolute core idea of this whole explainer. Managing your money isn't a hard science like physics. It's a soft skill. It's much more like psychology, filled with ego and fear and biases. How you act around money will always matter more than what you can plug into a spreadsheet. Okay, so if behavior is king, then you've got to ask, where do our financial behaviors even come from? Well, it turns out our personal histories with money create this unique worldview for each of us, and it explains why a money decision that looks absolutely insane to you might seem perfectly logical to someone else. Think about it like this. The sum total of your own experiences with the economy is maybe a microscopic fraction of everything that's ever happened, but that tiny, tiny sliver makes up about 80% of how you think the world works. So no one's crazy. We're all just playing a different game, guided by our own unique and very narrow slice of history. Let's make this real. Look at this chart. If you were born in 1970, the stock market went up nearly 10 times during your teens and 20s. You learned, deep in your bones, that stocks are an amazing engine for wealth. But if you were born just 20 years earlier, in 1950, you saw the market basically go flat for your entire youth. You learned stocks are a gamble. Same world, totally different lessons. And it's the exact same story for something like inflation. If you grew up in the 70s, you saw the price of everything skyrocket. That experience teaches you to be wary. But if you were born in 1990, inflation has barely been a thing for most of your life. Your instincts about saving and spending are just wired differently, not because one of you is smarter, but simply because of when you were born. But our own experience isn't the only invisible force pulling the strings. There's another huge factor that shapes our financial lives, one we don't like to talk about much: luck. And of course, its identical twin, risk. Just look at the story of Bill Gates. Was he brilliant? Absolutely. But he also had some 1 in a million luck. He just happened to go to one of the only high schools on the entire planet that had a computer back in 1968. Now, at that very same school was his best friend, Ken Evans. Just as smart, just as ambitious. They were planning to start a company together. But Ken experienced 1 in a million risk and died in a mountaineering accident before graduation. Same force, same magnitude, just pointed in opposite directions. So the big takeaway here is that you have to remember that nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. Every single outcome is a messy combination of your own hard work and these wild forces of luck and risk that you just can't control. It means we should be a little more humble when we're winning and a little more forgiving of ourselves when we're losing. All right, this brings us to a really critical distinction. We tend to lump building wealth into one big category, but it's actually two completely different skills, and honestly, they often work against each other. Getting rich is one thing. Staying rich, that's a whole other ballgame. Think of it like a sport. Getting wealthy, that's your offense. It takes risks, it requires optimism, and putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy, that's all defense. It requires humility, a little bit of fear. It requires the paranoia to know that the market can take away what you've earned just as fast as it gave it to you. It's all about survival. So how do you get good at survival? It starts with one of the most important and most underrated concepts in finance. It's captured perfectly in this story. The author Joseph Heller was at a party with Kurt Vonnegut, and they were looking at some billionaire. Vonnegut pointed out that this guy made more money in a single day than Heller's masterpiece, Catch-22, had made in its entire history. Heller's reply was just perfect. He said, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough." This lack of enough is a disease that has destroyed so many successful people. Take Rajat Gupta. He was the CEO of McKinsey, already worth $100 million, but he wanted to be a billionaire. So he got into insider trading, risked everything, and ended up in prison. Or Bernie Madoff. He's already running a hugely successful and legal business, but it wasn't enough. He needed more. So he built the biggest Ponzi scheme in history and ruined thousands of lives. They both fell into the exact same trap. They kept moving the goalposts. That's the danger of comparing yourself to others. There is always, always someone with more. The only way to win that game is to not play. The hardest but most important financial skill is just getting the goalposts to stop moving. Okay, we've covered a lot, but there is one last crucial ingredient to building wealth, and it's the one thing our human brains are just not built to appreciate. It's the most powerful force in finance, and yet it's the one we always seem to underestimate: the simple, astonishing power of time. To see what I mean, let's talk about the master, Warren Buffett. His net worth is around $84.5 billion. He is, without a doubt, one of the greatest investors who has ever lived. So, what's his secret? Everyone wants to know. They study his value investing strategies, his stock picks, his incredible business sense. But what if his real secret is something much, much simpler, something that we all have access to, but very few of us actually use? Now look at this number, $81.5 billion. It's almost his entire fortune. What could that possibly represent? That massive number, that is the portion of his fortune that he earned after he was old enough to collect Social Security. Let that sink in for a second. Buffett's skill is investing, no doubt, but his secret, his real superpower, it's time. He started investing when he was 10 years old, and he just never stopped. That is the unbelievable power of compounding. And this teaches us probably the most important lesson of all. Good investing isn't about trying to get the absolute highest returns or finding the next hot stock. That stuff is exciting, but it's hard to repeat. The real goal is to get pretty good returns that you can stick with for a really, really long time. That is how you build true, lasting wealth. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. The next time you see someone making a money decision that just looks absolutely crazy to you, buying a lottery ticket or refusing to invest in the stock market, just pause and ask yourself, given their unique life experience, their personal relationship with luck and risk, and their own definition of enough, could that crazy decision actually make perfect sense to them? If you can understand that, you're well on your way to understanding the real psychology of money.